Hey friend, welcome back to the Sage Audio channel. Today we'll be answering the question, what is stereo imaging? We'll be covering stereo imaging in tracking, mixing, and mastering, so stick around for the full video. But first, if this is a topic that you find interesting, I'd highly recommend looking into the blog post that's associated with this video. You can find the link for that in the description box below. Also, if you're an artist, engineer, or a producer and you have a mix that you need mastered, you can send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master that mix for you and send you a free mastered sample of it. All you have to do is set up this short account, upload the song, and we will do the rest. So stereo imaging is by no means a new topic. Ever since the advent of stereo playback systems, the notion of manipulating the stereo field and the placement of various signals within that field have been a topic of discussion amongst audio engineers. Prior to the popular use of stereo playback systems, mono or single speaker systems made tracking and mixing a little bit simpler. In short, every instrument that was recorded would play back through this one speaker. The signal would be entirely mono. When stereo speaker systems were introduced, engineers needed to consider new and exciting possibilities for a recording's various signals. Now, the uncertainty of how to mix for this new playback system can kind of be noticed when you're listening to earlier stereo mixes. For example, if you listen to an early stereo Beatles mix, you'll hear the bass guitar panned hard left, or maybe Paul or John's vocal panned hard right. This type of stereo imaging would seem extreme by today's standards, as how we interpret the possibilities for it has changed. In many ways, stereo imaging of today is more reserved and precise, and in many ways there are still many common misconceptions about it that negatively affect modern mixes and masters. So let's look deeper into stereo imaging, some of its important concepts, definitions, and misconceptions. Additionally, let's cover some of the processing used to affect the stereo image, how it works, and how it's utilized during tracking, mixing, and mastering, respectively. A stereo image can be broken down into three distinct sections. Number one, the center 90-degree image. Number two, the left 45-degree image. And number three, the right 45-degree image. The majority of your signal will be located within this first section, that is the center 90-degree image. Any traditional panning that you use will operate within this 90-degree image, so if you were to say pan the guitar hard left, it would be to the full left side of this 90-degree stereo image. But why is this important? Well, if you only use a traditional pan pot, you're working solely within this 90 degrees of the stereo image, which is completely fine, as many, if not most, albums work exclusively within this first section. But this also means that you're limiting yourself to only half of your potential 180-degree stereo field. So how do you access the second and third sections of a 180-degree stereo image? Now, this is where delay and phase cancellation come into play. By separating a mono signal into two separate signals and then delaying one signal slightly or significantly, you can cause phase cancellation. This phase cancellation results in the widening of the signal into various parts of the full 180-degree stereo field. The degree to which the signal is widened depends on multiple variables, including the frequency and amplitude of the signal and the amount of delay used. Next, let's discuss two common stereo imaging terms and try to define them to better understand them. So, what is width and depth in stereo imaging? Width is the location of a signal within the 180-degree stereo field. A wider image is one that stretches further into the stereo field and away from the center or 0 degrees. The depth is the amplitude of this signal. A louder amplitude seems closer, a quieter one seems farther away. Now, depth is also affected by temporal processing like delay and reverberation. A larger room size or longer reverb time will make a signal seem as if it's farther away. Conversely, a signal recorded with a close mic technique, or what is often referred to as a dry signal, will seem much closer. So how is a stereo image affected during tracking? Well, stereo imaging is established during tracking by using various microphone formations and post-recording panning, including but not limited to a spaced pair, a mid-side, and a decatree formation. Each microphone formation causes specific stereo imaging to occur and typically affects the centered 90-degree stereo image. So let's look at each one of the aforementioned microphone techniques individually and explain what's going on. As the name suggests, a spaced pair formation consists of two microphones identical in make and model. These two microphones are spaced an equal distance apart from one another and from a sound source to minimize the effect of phase cancellation. In this formation, once the source has been recorded, you'll pan the two signals hard left and right, or an equal and opposite amount away from the center. Doing so places the recorded signal somewhere in the 90 degrees stereo field. The mid-side microphone technique consists of two microphones, one of which is cardioid and the other is a figure 8 or bidirectional polar pattern. The cardioid signal will stay mono, whereas the bidirectional signal will be panned hard left and right after being duplicated and inverted. So this creates 3 channels in total, one cardioid and centered, 2 bidirectional and panned hard left and right, with the right having an inverted phase. Now, by adjusting the balance between the centered signal and the 2 bidirectional signals, you're essentially affecting your mid and side images. This technique places the image within the 90 degree stereo field. Similar to a space pair, the Deca-Tree employs 2 identical space microphones, however with the addition of a third omnidirectional microphone placed in the middle. The 2 space microphones are panned left and right, whereas the center Omni mic signal is left as is. By adjusting the amplitude of the Omni microphone and the space pair, you can create an image within the center 90 degree field. The space pair will represent the left and right sides of the 90 degree image, whereas the Omni microphone will fill in the gaps in between. This technique is great for creating a full stereo sound, one in which the majority of the 90 degree stereo image is filled. Next, let's take a look at how the stereo image is affected during mixing. The stereo image of a mix is affected using various forms of processing and panning, including traditional panning as well as delay and spectral-based panning. The stereo image of a recording is affected the most during mixing, as both the depth and the width of the image is altered. If you've created a mix or you've seen a song being mixed, you've definitely come across panning. Panning is used to adjust the position of a signal within the 90 degrees centered stereo field and is the most common method for affecting the stereo image during mixing. By panning, say a drum overhead hard left, you've moved the signal into the left speaker of a stereo speaker system. Now, by altering the pan of multiple instruments, their amplitude, and their temporal processing, a mixing engineer can accomplish a lot. With these tools, they can create the perception of both width and depth, in turn creating a more realistic space for multiple instruments to occupy. In addition to traditional panning, delay and spectral-based panning can be used to push various signals into the left and right 45-degree sections as described earlier. Again, these types of processing move the signal from the centered 90-degree stereo field into the 180-degree stereo field. Delay-based panning is comprised of 2 identical signals, with one signal delayed a small amount to create phase cancellation. When using delay-based panning, the effects sound really natural as they closely mimic how a sound source is delayed when traveling to our ears at slightly different times. Now, considering our ears are spaced apart, any sound source that is to our left or to our right will arrive at our ears at different times. So, for example, if a car horn is honked to our right side, our right ear will receive the signal before our left ear does. As a result, our brain will correctly interpret the source of that signal as being to our right. A similar concept is used when using delay to pan something. So if we want an acoustic guitar to sound as if it's coming from the left, we can delay the right signal. As a result, the left signal arrives to our left ear and then our right ear, creating the psychoacoustic perception that the signal is coming from our left. This handy trick is often used in modern mixes and can very easily be created using a sample delay. Spectral-based processing is comprised of 2 identical signals, with one signal having its original frequency range and the other having an attenuated high-frequency range. When using spectral-based panning, the effects closely mimic how our ears perceive sound sources, making it a very natural-sounding effect. Because our ears are placed on either side of our head, the shape of our head, as well as the position and shape of our ears, will affect the frequency response of any incoming signal. So for example, say a guitar is played on your right side. Your right ear will hear the guitar with its typical frequency spectrum, but what will happen to your left ear? Because your head is in the way of your left ear and the sound source, certain frequencies, primarily in the high frequency range, will be absorbed, reflected, and dispersed, ultimately causing them to be attenuated. Now, as a result, your left ear will hear the guitar, but with an attenuated high-frequency range. This will cause your brain to perceive the guitar as coming from the right side, as the same effect would in the real world. So, if you're mixing and you want to create an incredibly natural-sounding yet advanced form of panning, utilize delay and spectral panning. This, when paired with traditional panning, temporal processing, and various amplitudes of your signals, will give you the tools you need to create an impressive stereo image, both in width and depth. Lastly, how is the stereo image affected during mastering? The primary way that mastering affects the stereo image, at least in terms of width, is through mid-side processing. Because mastering typically deals with a stereo file, the option to adjust instruments individually isn't an option. Mid-side processing gives mastering engineers extra control over the stereo file by allowing the left and right channels to be separated into two additional channels, both mid and side. The mid channel includes the centered image, or the entirely mono image, which will make up the majority of the recording. The side channel includes everything that isn't mono, which can represent up to 179 degrees of the stereo image. Now, by amplifying or attenuating the mid channel, you're affecting your mono image, and by amplifying or attenuating your side channel, you're affecting the stereo image. The only other example of affecting the stereo width during mastering would be when using a delay-based imager. This type of plugin will apply the same type of sample delay to a signal, causing phasing to push the image into various parts of the 180-degree stereo field. Now, although this is an option, it isn't utilized too often, or at least it shouldn't be used too often. The reason being, delaying entire groups of instruments and frequency ranges can cause severe phase cancellation. Additionally, widening the image at this stage will cause significant widening. This can and often does cause a master to lose impact. Furthermore, significant widening, especially into the 180-degree image, will not translate well on a mono speaker system. With that said, delay-based stereo imaging should be approached very carefully during the mastering stage. In other words, more is certainly not better when it comes to stereo widening during mastering. So these are our thoughts on stereo imaging, but what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, again, definitely check out the blog post where you can find a lot more information on this topic and others like it. The link is in the description box below. Also, if you're an artist or an engineer, send us one of your mixes at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample. All you have to do is set up the short account, upload the song, and we will do the rest. But thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and share this video with your friends. This way we know if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Also, you can subscribe to the channel. We release new videos every week, and subscribing is the best way to stay up to date. There's a comment section where you can leave your thoughts on this video or a suggestion for a future video. And again, if you're an artist or an engineer and you have a mix that you need mastered, you can send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.